2, 3, 4, 1, 2, 3, 4, here we go. Here we go. Here we go. Here we go. Every day. Every day. Gotta run. Gotta run. Every day. Every day. Gotta run. Gotta run. Gotta be. Gotta be. Number one. Number one. Gotta be. Gotta be. Number one. Number one. Gotta be. Gotta be. Airborne. 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 Ranger. Ranger. Airborne. Airborne. Ranger. Ranger.
The Army's M1 Abrams thunders across the land like a deadly storm. Tankers who fight in it share an electrifying experience few men will ever have. Firing the M1's lethal main gun leaves an unforgettable impression on even the most skilled crews.
The first time I commanded an M1 was on a tank gunnery range. I was excited and nervous at the same time. You're trying to do your best, and you want to do your best that you can shoot the tank. And like I said, once you get that down range, it's a pretty exciting experience, electrifying.
Tank Commander Lieutenant J.J. Love has crewed other tanks in his career, but nothing in his experience of tank warfare has prepared him for the uniqueness of the M1 Abrams.
First time was awesome. You're doing 45 miles an hour. We've had the opportunity, not intentionally, but to actually jump the tank in the air. Compared to the old 60s style tank, you'd be thrown around the inside of the tank. This one, you just hit the ground, buff along the ground, and very slight rocking motion.
First time I drove the M1, to me it was like a Cadillac in disguise. You know, it was a good feeling. You get in that driver's seat, and it's just amazing the way it takes off and the way it cruises. And if you've experienced driving or riding in other tanks, it's like a Cadillac, just in disguise. It's a smooth ride.
Disguises are dropped in battle as these M1 tankers work the most lethal ground weapon ever made. Before her crews can drive their tank into battle, the M1 must be sculpted from steel and depleted uranium. Pieced together by skilled engineers to form a nearly indestructible design, the M1 has no equal in tank warfare. The General Dynamics Corporation brings the industrial magic together in America's heartland, in Lima, Ohio. Like a rare diamond, the M1 Abrams is crafted with care and expertise. When construction is completed, the M1 will be ready for her well-trained crews to take control of her. As the dynamic chemistry of man and machine meld together, the M1 and her crews will be a terrifying force on the battlefield. Tank commanders Love and Segovia pull together skilled crews to make their M1s growling nightmares in the eyes of the enemy. Teamwork is the secret to success. Tankers are interdependent on one another, as well as on the sophisticated fire control systems within the M1 Abrams that assist them in finding and killing enemy targets. The crowded, confusing nerve center within the M1's revolving turret is actually a home of high-tech familiarity for the crew. Onboard fire control systems are fully automated and driven by a sophisticated computer. Together, they can provide their human operators with everything needed to obtain a kill on the first shot. The M1's cannon can fire accurately on the move, and there's even a night vision scope for enhanced target acquisition. For tank commanders and their crews, the M1 is more than just a weapon. Tankers speak of their M1s fondly, a home away from home that is more friend than machine.
It's got everything. It's got, they like the engine because it's so big, it puts out a lot of heat. They can cook on it. There's just all kinds of things they can come up with. You can hold a towel back there and dry it off. They've decided this right here is just a home. This is a house right here, and they get in it, live in it, and are happy.
Trench warfare during World War I would claim more than 800,000 lives. British naval officer Winston Churchill promoted the deployment of armored land vehicles. It was hoped that this new tank weapon would protect advancing British soldiers from the bullets of German machine guns. The tank's early successes changed the way wars would be fought, as soon as tank technology caught up with its potential. By World War II, tanks were the backbone of the European armies. In the northern Sahara Desert, German Afrika Korps Commander Erwin Rommel was ultimately defeated by British Lieutenant General Bernard Law Montgomery in their legendary tank battles. On the Eastern Front, the German Army's panzers were being outgunned by the Soviets' T-34s. Although experts in combining air and ground forces, the German military was ultimately crushed in the east by the massive deployment of Soviet tanks and artillery. This Soviet battle doctrine emphasizing huge numbers of armored vehicles is still followed today. The Soviet Army's victory at Kursk started their march into Berlin. On the Western Front, U.S.-built M4 Sherman tanks were commanded by Generals Omar Bradley, George S. Patton, and Courtney H. Hodges. In the Allies' final drive of the war, a key bridge which crossed the Rhine River at Remagen was captured intact. The fierce house-to-house battle inside the German city was over within hours. The victory at Remagen allowed Allied tank forces to push into the heart of Germany, and within a month, the war in Europe was over. The Soviets, who occupied North Korea after World War II, installed a communist government hostile to the United Nations Democratic Republic in the South. Less than 1 year after independence, the South underwent a surprise attack as 8 full North Korean infantry divisions invaded across the border. With less than half of the North's military strength, South Korea's army, fighting beside a handful of U.S. troops, were nearly overwhelmed before help could arrive. The Soviet-built T-34 tanks left over from World War II were still awesome weapons in the early 1950s. North Korea's Soviet-styled massive deployment of armor and infantry left the democratic forces no choice but to retreat. The communist momentum was to carry them down to the tip of the Korean peninsula near Busan. Although the few U.S. troops still able to defend fought back valiantly, most units suffered heavy casualties. The death toll in the Korean War was tragically high. Commanding General Douglas MacArthur and his officers planned an ingenious landing at Incheon, near the capital city of Seoul. Troops, heavily armed M41 Walker Bulldog, and M4 Sherman tanks were convoyed to attack the communist forces from behind and cut off their supplies from the north. The panicking communists fought UN forces fiercely. Communist tank platoons were stopped dead in their tracks. The Korean War would now become one of attrition, not too different from the trench warfare of World War I. After checking a Chinese counterattack, General James Van Fleet retook the offensive and destroyed the communist forces below the 38th parallel. The joyful South Korean people thanked the UN troops after their country's liberation. The steaming hot and humid weather of Vietnam sometimes made tank crew lives miserable, but did not prevent them from getting their job done. Chrysler Corporation's M48A3 Patton main battle tank was the most powerful armored vehicle deployed by the U.S. Army and Marines during the 8 years of war here. However, this was a war without front lines and with little American regard for holding on to hard-won territory. Armored vehicles were unfortunately relegated to smaller roles. First produced in the 1950s, the basic design of the M48 dates back to the M26 of World War II. The M48A3 was powered by a robust diesel engine. It was armed with a potent 90mm gun, which fired a variety of high-explosive and armor-piercing shells. Despite the M48's inherent attributes of self-protection and firepower, air support had become the chief means of suppressing enemy attacks. The jungle and rough terrain in other Vietnamese combat zones would certainly slow down tank maneuverability, but no aircraft or helicopter could maintain its position as long or as well as the M48 Patton could. As tank design evolved over the years, so did training of the men who would specialize in tank warfare.
It's amazing because as much power and all of what's happening during the time you squeeze the trigger, and that gunner seat actually you don't really feel very much. It's set up just that good to where it won't shock you when you're scared to pull the trigger because you're scared of what's going to happen.
Gunner Specialist Williams describes the firing of the M1 cannon as a deceptively mild sensation. Such a description is a tribute to the M1's superior craftsmanship.
I think the M1 is a great tank. It's amazing how fast we can go over different terrain and have a level firing platform to fire our main weapon. It amazes me. It's a great piece of equipment.
Sergeant Curtis Segovia's experience with older tanks has left him with a profoundly noble impression of the M1, a tank with seemingly no limitation in terms of speed, firepower, and crew protection. Still, the versatility of the M1 Abrams is only as effective as that of the men that operate it. Without its loader, gunner, driver, and commander, the M1 is a high-tech body without a brain. The nations of the North Atlantic Treaty Organization, or NATO, utilize the M1 Abrams and other main battle tanks as the backbone of their armored defense. In years past, they diligently patrolled the Iron Curtain borders with the vigilance of watchdogs. They could weather any climate and traverse any kind of terrain, no matter how muddy, wet, or inhospitable it may be. Crews of the M1 must do more than function perfectly as a unit. In fact, they must almost think together as a single fighting organism. The demands on the M1 crew are far more extensive than those placed on tank crews of the past. They must be experts in electronics, mechanics, and ballistics. Their reflexes must match the speed of thought, and their disciplined hearts and souls must virtually fuse with the M1's sophisticated technology. The blend of mind, spirit, and training with that of machine creates an almost supernatural synergy between tank and crew. The Cold War between East and West is thawed, but turmoil in the Middle East looms over the world like a black shroud of terror, and war again erupting in this area is always an imminent reality. But the M1 and its crews have demonstrated to hostile forces in the past that to engage them in combat is to face certain defeat. The secret to the M1 crew's success is that they always think in terms of hitting first, hitting fast, and hitting hard. Hitting hard and hitting fast is what the Canadian Army Trophy competition is all about. In Grafenwehr, Germany, tank and tank crews from various nations in the NATO alliance will be given the opportunity for displaying their weapons and their training. Like thoroughbreds eager for the race, these tankers represent the best of their armies, and they are anxious to prove their expertise to a watching world. For 1 week, the crews of the M1 Abrams will engage in battle runs in the biannual Canadian Army Trophy competition, trying to best the very best of other tanks and crews. The driver gives life to the powerful gas turbine of the M1 as the rest of the crew takes their battle stations. Since fast target acquisition and first round hits make or break the competition, crew members double-check the bore sight on the barrel of the main gun. After this inspection, M1 tanks join German, Dutch, and Canadian Leopards, along with British Challengers, on the first battle run of the competition. The Canadian Leo 1 tank platoon will start the first round. There are no second chances in a battle run, so firing fast and firing accurately are paramount. Computers tabulate points and keep score as the Dutch and German Leopards roar onto the field. The Canadian tank crew scored well on stationary and on-the-move firing matches, but the Dutch have scored 18,000 points, and the German Leopards are scoring even more points with each passing minute. Points are awarded based on the time it takes to acquire, fire upon, and hit a target, both from a stationary and on-the-move basis. It soon becomes clear to the Dutch that their lead is fading as the Germans soar ahead with close to 19,500 points. Now only one tank team remains. The crew of the M1 Abrams comes to bat in the final stages of this strenuous competition. The pressure is on for the team of the M1 Abrams. The scores are close and every round will have to count. The M1 team knows that every shot will have to be perfect in order to beat the Germans. Targets will appear out of nowhere, and the crew must treat them like deadly enemies that could strike first, if not kill beforehand. Within the turret of the M1, the loader inserts a round into the main gun breech. The tank commander visually acquires a target and shouts out commands like target right or target left. The gunner enters the target information and then waits for the commander to yell fire. The gunner's answer to the fire order is on the way, and the tank delivers a red-hot round through the air destined to pulverize an enemy target. The loader reloads as empty shell casings are ejected from the main gun's breech and fall to the floor of the tank. The German sky becomes a crisscrossing hell of molten fire as the M1 hits targets everywhere. As the firefight ends, 32 main targets have been destroyed by the Americans for a total of 20,490 points, 800 points more than the Germans. All competitors have performed well. Second and third place is an achievement, but only one tank platoon and its crews has received top honors. The American M1 Abrams and its crew has won first place. The crews rejoice as they secure well-earned bragging rights to being the best tank gunners in the world. The M2 Bradley Infantry Fighting Vehicle is a new kind of armored weapon system. Fast and highly maneuverable, it can carry troops and fight at the same time. The Bradley's blend of self-protection, troop load, and firepower from its 7.62mm machine gun give it a close-in fighting capability the U.S. Army has never had before. Its stabilized 25mm cannon can punch holes through enemy lightly armored vehicles. top speed is 41 miles per hour. The Bradley is also fully amphibious. Its firepower is only a fingertip away. The weapon system is electronically controlled. After assessing the target data, the commander or gunner select the projectile type and firing rate. When the Bradley's gunner can't see his target because of smoke, dust, or nightfall, he can still shoot accurately by aiming with the heat-sensitive infrared sight. To kill a heavily armored enemy tank, the Bradley simply raises its tow missile twin-tube launching system. This lethal wire-guided anti-tank missile uses a 5-inch warhead to bust its way through the thickest armor. All the gunner has to do is keep the crosshairs on his target. A load of 10 tow missiles with a 2-mile range means a lot of dead tanks for one Bradley. Its relatively small size makes the Bradley a tough target for surviving enemy tanks trying to fire back. Smoke grenades make targeting the Bradley even harder. A cavalry version called the M3 carries a weapons load twice that of the M2 infantry design. Most Bradleys are the M2 versions, able to carry 7 combat-ready soldiers into battle. A Soviet BMP would be attacked from all sides if it was found by a Bradley infantry fighting vehicle. The Bradley M2 and M3 fill in the gaps between main battle tanks and armored personnel carriers. Sunrise over the Mojave Desert in Southern California paints a picture of an unforgiving landscape that might better be imagined belonging to an alien planet. Yet it is in this remote wasteland that tank crews of the M1 Abrams will be put to the most stringent tests available in tank warfare. Table 8 qualifying is a crucial trial for tank crews that will evaluate their ability to put steel on target. The phrase "steel on target" is used to describe a tank team's ability to engage moving and stationary targets with a variety of weapons during daylight and periods of limited visibility. All offensive tasks will require the tank to fire on the move at speeds reaching and exceeding 25 miles per hour. The crews know that Table 8 qualifying is a serious test of their skills. The targets they will be shooting at will be viewed by them as actual enemies. In a real battle, the quickness with which a crew can utilize its machine gun and main gun batteries will determine whether they live or die. Table 8 will ensure that in all cases, it is the enemy that will be struck down and destroyed. The interior of the M1 turret gives an impression of calm and spaciousness, but once on the move, the engines will thunder, and cordite fumes will combine with 100-degree heat, making the cabin anything but a pleasant environment. Tank Commander Charles Jericho and Gunnery Sergeant Jimmy Janes prepare for the grueling ordeal ahead of them. Today's Table 8 test will determine whether they are ready for the ultimate challenge of combat. As loader specialist Iran Days double-checks his controls, driver Leon Gant is given the order by Tank Commander Cherico to move forward. As Table 8 begins, the excitement quickly reaches a fevered pitch as targets loom on the horizon, threatening the M1 and its crew with destruction. Things happen in the blink of an eye. Once a target is located and laser subsystems are activated, the job of killing a stationary or moving target belongs solely to the crew. Two targets exist in Table 8 qualifying, tank and infantry. Points are higher for tank kills, while infantry kills made by machine gun hits are somewhat lower. For the moment, Cherico and his crew concentrate solely on tank kills. The M1 uses the Sabo shell, a devastating dart-shaped projectile that streaks through the air in a corkscrew trajectory. It can penetrate the thickest armor in the world and then blow apart inside an enemy tank. Its killing effectiveness against armor and crews is gruesomely efficient. Cherico knows that his Sabo kills are good, but that a new threat confronts his crew. Machine gun batteries must be manned and manned quickly, as enemy targets appear less than 100 yards away. Cherico and crew nail solid kills, but enemy targets are everywhere. Sergeant Cherico and his crew have so far blasted every target off the desert, but the Table 8 tasks come hard and fast. Gunner Janes angles his gun into position, ready for Cherico's command to again fire on enemy positions, sometimes referred to as most dangerous targets, or BMPs. Ratings for Cherico and his crew are based on a point system. 1,000 total points representing main cannon and machine gun fire, both in defensive and offensive tasks, is a perfect score. Sergeant Cherico and his crew need a minimum of 700 points to qualify. Should they fail to achieve this minimum, they will repeat the Table 8 task where poor scoring was indicated until qualification is issued. Cherico continues to give the order to fire, and Gunner Janes responds with identify and on the way.
On the way!
On the way means another kill, and Cherico gives thumbs up to his men. If Table 8 right now was a real battlefield, then it would be a pretty bloody place indeed for the enemy. So far, Sergeant Cherico's crew has crippled enemy opposition. Table 8 is drawing to a close, and Cherico's crew is looking forward to obtaining the minimum number of points needed for qualification. Sergeant Cherico, however, will push his tank and crew to shoot for a perfect score. Other tanks are also struggling to qualify in the vastness of this live fire training range. A tank down range of Sergeant Cherico's M1 engages infantry targets. In case of close infantry attack, the crew must coordinate machine gun fire together. The gunner fires the main cannon and a 7.62 caliber coaxial machine gun. The loader shoots another 7.62 caliber machine gun at his station, while the tank commander operates a 50 caliber machine gun from his command position. The crackle of machine gun fire is deafening as rounds slice through the air in search of targets. The machine gun scores are not good, and this means that the task must be completed again. Another Table 8 run will have to be repeated by this tank crew until the main gun and machine gun batteries work together in perfect harmony. Meanwhile, Sergeant Cherico and his crew continue to stalk enemy targets. The main cannon leads the M1 forward like an enormous antenna, eager to find and strike a dangerous enemy target. Sabo shells are loaded, and Cherico acquires his targets as fast as possible. Unlike a Hollywood Western where the good guys have unlimited rounds for their guns, Cherico's crew has only a limited supply of rounds within which to complete each task. If they run out of rounds before the next task comes up, they lose crucial points needed for qualification. For 5 days and nights, Sergeant Cherico and his determined crew have ravaged enemy targets. They have already surpassed the minimum requirement of points for qualification, but these tankers will be satisfied with nothing less than a perfect score. Identify, fire, and on the way are words that echo through the M1. The will to be the best and emerge victorious is the greatest weapon Cherico and his crew possess. As targets are decimated one after another, it becomes clear to the judges and Sergeant Cherico that his tank and crew are red-hot winners. The next assignment they receive will be one that could take them into the real fury of battle. Sergeant Cherico and his crew will be ready, willing, and able to meet the challenge.
The targets are easy to identify. For me, it's just sometimes on the move. For a new gunner, it's a new experience, and sometimes it's difficult, but the more you do it, the better you get.
We have a stabilization system that is beautiful. You kick that stave in, and it's almost like you're just sitting still. It's just that good.
I've got a multi-million-dollar piece of equipment there, and I think the taxpayers got their money's worth this time.
During the Desert Storm conflict, the Iraqi army, led by the nefarious Saddam Hussein, confronted the might of the M1 Abrams and its crews on the desert battlefield. 1,956 M1 Abrams faced the infamous Republican Guard in a theater that comprised 10,000 armored vehicles. When the smoke cleared, the pride of the Iraqi tank force was reduced to shambles. The protective armor of the M1 saved crews from injury even when the tank sustained direct hits from Iraqi shelling. Tank crews utilized tactics similar to those learned in simulated battles against the OPFOR at the National Training Center. In direct engagement with the enemy in Desert Storm, not one M1 Abrams suffered destruction. And in a span of 100 hours, the M1 tankers destroyed more Iraqi tanks than the combined air power of the Alliance could in 30 days. In an age of warfare where heroes and champions are sometimes lost in logistics, the M1 Abrams and its crews will continue to enjoy star status as the most fearsome armored adversary on the planet.